Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me is my dear friend and co host and podcast founder, Jussara Korngold. If this is the first time you're watching this podcast like program, please note this series of discussions, the weekly talks, are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis and it is our offering to you, to me, to all of us to achieve a safe space so that we can confront, compare, correlate, and even expand our concepts of spirituality from a psychological lens. I'm here with you, Jussara, and today we're going to discuss social phobias. Before we start our conversation, I would like to recognize the organization that is sponsoring this program, the TV Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritist Federation, and the International Spiritist Council, as well as AMI Brazil. If you have not done so, please take a moment to hit subscribe. And if you'd like to check out more about some other conversations, discussions, and resources, check us out at www.spiritist.us. If you have any question, any feedback, any critique, please write it down in the chat window and we'll try to answer today or at a later episode. But before we get started, Josada, I was wondering if, this time of the year, we just went through the end of a cycle, right? Maybe this is a good opportunity for us to take a moment to think about ourselves, take stock about our lives. The year ended, right? A cycle has ended. And maybe we can think about, did we actually manage to plan how to get where we are today? And if we did, perhaps we can talk about the elements that led us here in this very chaotic, very complex life. What are our triggers, our culture norms, or even our expectations? For those of us who did not plan to get where we are today, why not, right? Did we maybe just opt out or just felt safe where we are and we don't want to challenge us anymore? So this is very interesting. And why do I say this? Because we are pushed, right, Josada, pushed to perform. We take stock at the end of the year. Have we done what I said a year ago I wanted to do? Have I achieved this by this year of our lives, et cetera, et cetera? And with all of those discussions, there is a component that we want to talk today, which is social phobia. So let's just take a moment to perhaps define what they are and also understand why did it started, who started this definition. So Josara, as you know, Gustav Jung, he is the Swiss psychologist and psychotherapist, and he's really well known for um, founding analytical psychology, but he's also really well known for the book that he wrote called Psychological Types. This book was published over 100 years ago in the early 1920s, and it was actually a result of about 20 years, 2 decades, researching in the field of practical psychology. Jung at the time was trying to really reconcile mainstream theories that belonged, on one hand, to Sigmund Freud, on the other hand, to Alfred Adler. And in working and researching, he comes out with this idea of two attitudes and four types. What are they? Well, easy enough: introversion, extroversion, and the types which are really divided into groups, right? The rational or judging attitude, or I'm sorry, let me start again. the two types, two attitudes and four types. The functional types are rational or irrational. Simply, it means either as a rational being in my, my function, my predominant function may be one that thinks but also judges, right? And the other component could be that more he called irrational, which is really a more of a nature to perceive, to use your intuition, your feeling. Why is it even important? Because we're going to talk about one attitude, a personality attitude, which is introversion. Josara, you may want to ask me why. Why did I spend time to compelled to define personality? And I say to you, it is because it is important for all of us to understand this so-called personality attitude, introversion, because according to Jung, it is simply a predisposition to focus life in terms of how I focus my inner world, right? So it's introversion, whereas extroversion, it's very easy to compare. It's outside. I look at what everything is outside of me versus inside of me. And those four types, they get together. We've heard about the Myers-Briggs, right? That are 16 personality types when we start to combine all of those extroverted thinking, introverted thinking, for example. And it can get quite complicated, but we're here to first understand that we are not just a pure, right? We're in labeled as I am this, I cannot be that, but it really tells our predisposition about what feels more comfortable from a personality perspective. And the reason I go back, Jusada, to Jung is because he talks about the idea that what is not easy, not what is not so part of your predisposition becomes a part of what we are, but we repress, right? And it's very interesting because when we repress something, as we talked before, right, Josada, it bubbles up in times of extreme stress or something, even if we are, for example, an extroverted type of personality, it our introversion may come because we need to go through certain things. So anyways, this is good for all of us to understand and how it may lead to the topic of our conversation today, which is social phobia. So um, I say this, Josara, because we talked previously about the idea of individuation. Basically, individuation is a process of becoming aware of all that we are, right? And all that we can achieve. This sense of um, being integral, being whole, being individuated. And as I say this, I go back to the book, this beautiful book that Joanna de Angelis wrote, The Integral Human Being, where she tells exactly what Jung mentioned, so about 100 years ago, that when we are under a lot of stress, we, as introverted individuals, may fall into that category of having phobic behaviors. What am I talking about? Basically, I'm talking about social phobia or phobic behaviors that there are many of there, right, Josara? But the one that we're talking about, I would like to talk about, is actually social anxiety disorder, or in other words, anxiety. It is okay. It is normal for all of us to be afraid. It is normal for all of us to have anxiety. The problem, Josara, is the fact that it can become a pathological state for us, which is this long term, overwhelming fear of a social situation. right? So, question for you, Jill. I know that those of us with this type of social anxiety disorder feel that we are somehow judged, that we are, under the microscope. And while this can be treated with either talk therapy, pharmacotherapy, etc., my question to you, Jill, why is that we are so vulnerable, especially in this day and age, to feeling that pathological um, state of fear with social anxiety? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so first of all, let me greet everyone. Like you said, we are beginning a new year. And so, my best wishes for all of you. And of course, for my loving teammate, Marcia. I would like to propose something to you
Okay.
this year, to all of you, which is normally, like we say at the beginning of the year, we kind of plan what we would like to achieve, and of course, not only in terms of success, professional or whatever, but also our leisure time. What are we going to do? So we like to plan trips, and
Mhm,
in this case, I'm going to use the word voyages, right?
mhm.
So there is one voyage that we all should be thinking about, which is the one that is not going to cost you anything. It is the one that we will do a voyage to deep inside ourselves. So, and this is a hard one
Yes.
because this is goes much with what you asked, Marcia, in terms of why it is sometimes we feel easier to just avoid certain situations, to avoid things that we know that we are going to be reacting in a way or another, or that may be risky to us.
Mhm.
We do not want to to go into this voyage of getting to know ourselves, of
Yeah.
having to look deep inside and analyzing our flaws, and of course the many virtues that we already have achieved. I mean, we've been around for a while, so this is one thing that is there. But we also have to remember that we are not just a being that, according to my birth certificate, now it's named, Jussara Korngold, but I am so much more of that than that. I'm the sum up of many incarnations where I lived different experiences, and some of them, the good
Mhm.
and the bad, it stayed with me. And so, for whatever reason, we see ourselves reacting to some situations that we will not find rational explanations in this lifetime, that may be related to previous ones. So now we are talking about fear and anxiety and situations that can provoke, trigger that more than other situations. We
Mhm.
have to take this into consideration. And of course, as you said, there is nothing else that will help us than to become conscious of that, and even look for the correct kind of treatment, so
Mhm.
that we can face and start digging up, like in an archaeological site, the things that may be in the root of our reactions, of
Mhm.
our traumas, our fears, that if we just leave there, they are not
Mhm.
go away,
Mhm.
right? So I think, when we are talking about social phobias, it may be something that is, it's cooking for quite a while. We cannot just, point to a special occasion and said precisely, this is where I started, having fear of heights.
There is no such a thing as a switch, right? From that point on, I
Yeah,
no longer could go to a very tall building and feel okay, right?
yes, and also, you cannot say, oh, just because I had a scare with, let's say, a motor vehicle, I'm not getting into a motor vehicle anymore, or things like this,
Hmm.
that per se, not necessarily are just related to this event. In order for
Hmm.
us to assume this kind of attitude,
Hmm.
it's history. Maybe it was not exactly a vehicle. Oh, it could have been, a horse, a chariot, whatever, but something
Hmm.
that awakened in us the same kind of reaction. And so this is one thing. And then now at this point, you maybe ask, oh, come on, sister, this is not fair. I have already on my plate just thinking about how you're bringing about
Hmm.
past experience. It's just for us to have on the back of our mind that, you know, when something is too strong, too deep, there is more to that. There is
Yeah.
a history.
I love what you're saying, right? Because when we talk about what Gustav Jung talked about in terms of this predisposition, and we talked about talk therapy or even a, a drug therapy to deal with our this pathological fear. It is good to understand that there is a root cause, but that root cause, as you said, may not be easily found. Those triggers are there, but we don't know why, right? Why is it going to, for example, an elevator is triggering my heart to beat faster, and I start to sweat, and I have all sorts of physical reactions to something that is common to our modern life, right? So I think it's important for us to understand that somehow it may be hidden in our, what I call our inherited uh, past of other lives that we lived. And I think it's very important for all of us to think about it, as well as, for example, um, conditions in this lifetime that may be quite hard, right? Josada, abuse, bullying, somebody teasing us when we are very young may lead us to be perhaps adolescents or young adults that are quite shy and not able to really bloom into the potential that all that is out there. So I really appreciate that, right? It's just so hard. And just that, I think not so long ago we talked about the notion of freedom, right? That I think, if I remember correctly, you mentioned that we all aspire for love, peace, and freedom, right? And so when we talk about this need to be free, can we perhaps talk a little bit about how does it relate with this prison? And I'm air quote here, prison of that we put in ourselves, that we are no longer able to get out there, and our social phobia is so strong that puts us to stay closed off to friends, to adventures, to a really full life. Can we talk a little bit about that? Perhaps that concept of being free.
I was just thinking now, Marcia. I don't know if I'm going to recall completely, but I'm sure you will know and you can complement what I'm going to say. All of a sudden, it came to my mind the story that Socrates proposed to us in terms of the cave,
Hmm.
right, where there are all these people living in the cave, only seeing the shadows,
Yeah.
and you don't go outside and to see what it really is, uh,
Hmm.
and I think that's so many times we do that as well. And when Young is talking about this, typology, extrovert,
Mhm.
introvert, and the four functions and the variations, it,
Mhm.
I think it was like, his way of come to terms with
Mhm.
the different personalities that we find, and even in just one person. So
Mhm.
now we are not going to be labeled as being an introvert or an extrovert, because we will see people that will say, oh my god, this people, when this person, when he or she does that, it looks like a different person. No, it's all part of us. But
Mhm.
in sense of what you were talking about in terms of bullying and trauma and abuse
Mhm.
we have suffered, and
Mhm.
the flight or fight response that we have
Right. Right.
will sometimes lead us to hide uh,
Mhm.
importance of that occurrence to us,
Mhm.
so that we do not have to face it. And
Yes.
not only not face it because it can be, hurting, a very hurting experience,
Yes.
but God forbid it can be true.
Yeah.
That someone said something to you that not only
Mm.
is hurtful, but you
Yeah.
recognize that is true.
Yes.
And so there are so many different aspects that we have to think about, but uh, it's not healthy for us to ignore. It's like, putting all the dust under the rug, and one day you will see that, it's really bad there. And sometimes
Mhm.
we do that.
Mhm.
we we are not saying here that it's not right what we feel when
Mhm.
somebody or someone comes and hurt us or do things to us that for one reason or another may hurt our feelings. Okay,
Yes.
it can be, unfortunately, like children and teenagers, that they are not very sensitive in relation to their peers, and they just start laughing because that clothes that you decided to wear today was not according to fashion or whatever. It's such a silly thing that may impact you for the rest of your life.
Correct.
And believe me, it's not just because you can recognize that precise fact, reason that led you to this kind of behavior, that we are going to manage to just say to fix it. Instead,
Mhm.
it's an
Mhm.
assessment.
Yeah.
So we are going to make an assessment, and then we will correct it. Let me share something very personal. Um, I'm a cancer survivor, and I lost my mother to cancer. And right after, I did all the treatment that I had to do, and that was years ago. Thank God I'm still here. Um, I started to gain weight, and it was not. I mean, there was not no justifiable reason for me to, to totally lose control of my weight.
Mhm.
And I finally realized why this was happening, and then I went to therapy. I still need to lose some weight, but it has nothing to do with that anymore. And then going to the therapist, I told her, I think that the reason why I try to lose the weight and I cannot is because every time that I have to go, and this was quite often, to uh, a cancer hospital, I would
Mhm.
see all those cancer patients, skin and bone.
Yeah.
And that to me was the image of, if I'm skin and bone, if I'm too thin, it's because I'm ill. So I knew perfectly well what the problem was, that I was trying to lose weight and nothing worked, because at the back of my mind there was this image that I saw, like, happening with my mom, and I saw with all the other patients, and that was like, something that didn't allow me to go through with anything. So
Mhm.
some things can be so um, difficult for us to recognize. And after I recognized that, and I sought treatment, I went for treatment, it took me a while to take
Mhm.
control. It was not that just, okay, now I know, and from now on, everything is going to be different. No, it's a whole process that I have to tell you, I still deal with that until today.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, now I know I improve it, but it is still there. So we have to be very careful, and also very accepting and loving with our own selves, because it's not just a matter of saying, "Oh, come on, this is so irrational. Move
Mhm.
on," you know. No, it will hurt us and get to us in different ways, and these different variations that Freud, no, Jung mentions here.
Mhm.
It's exactly that, and sometimes we say, "Oh, I think that today I woke up bipolar." No, it's not just bipolar; it's tripolar, quadrupolar. You know, we go, depending on how life happens, we go to one place to the other,
Yes.
and having to face all that many times, we will prefer to be in a shell.
Yes, and it's very important to understand that, and thank you for sharing your story. By the way, it's very touching and very representative of why sometimes we don't know, but we create in ourselves this virtual, if you will, prison. Right? We create, we imprison ourselves, and we complain about it. So, which is just a joke here, but uh, why those prisons, right, Josiah? And I think it's, if I extrapolate to a view of the postmodern man, you and I, all of us here living in this world, we really fluctuate, right, between being completely okay to no, I'm not okay. I'm actually dissatisfied with this or that. And in many cases, that level of dissatisfaction, fear, hurt, pain, reaction, aggression, and even can go all the way to self-destruction.
Mhm.
And but it's really important for all of us to understand that we go up and down, right? And we go through joy and fear and sadness, whatever. But it is really important for us to not lose ourselves, as you mentioned, not to lose our love for ourselves, including faith. Because if we lose that, then we fall prey to a system of mistrust, right? It's a very systemic way to look at the world, with suspicion, to look at the world with mistrust, and look at the world with fear as a result. So, Ju, do you have a sense of what else can we do? We talked about therapy, talk therapy, right? We talked about some drug therapy. We talked about faith. What else can we do? What should we perhaps focus on to build that sense of resilience and reliance on ourselves to confront whatever comes at us, and whatever may be great success as well as great failures, they will all come to us. We have to face them. So what do you think we can do to live a better life, that we're not so hurt, and in the process of being hurt we push ourselves further into that cell that we create?
Well, of course, there is not a recipe, right? We are, or not a shortcut for
Mm-hmm.
things we
Mm-hmm.
have to do. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, there are many things that even Joanna de Angelis emphasizes in this chapter from the book, The Integral Human Being, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where she mentions, the talk therapy, behavior therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and medication. She mentions also meditation,
Mm-hmm.
a way of us uh, getting control of ourselves. But one thing that I would add, and she mentions that as well, is, be careful with social media,
Yes,
because it's
yes,
so much pressure.
yeah.
It's not necessarily, I'm not talking about the bad things, the bad comments that we shouldn't be reading on the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about the good things as well. So
Mm-hmm.
when you take a picture of a beautiful, delicious dish, and without realizing that today, thank God, with technology, so many houses, so many people have access to that, and they
Mm-hmm.
will look at food that they will never afford themselves.
Correct.
And
Mm-hmm.
they will look at situations like people, oh, if you have never tried, going to the beach in this, paradise in the Maldives or whatever, you
Yeah.
have not lived life. And all those kinds of things, like, oh, if you do not have this blouse from so and so, it's because, you don't know what you're missing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so even the sharing of good things that are making you happy,
Yeah.
we have to be very mindful how to, if this is going to, if it is not being selfish on our part,
Mm-hmm. That's
right?
that's very important, right?
I'm just thinking about myself. Oh, I want to just share with the world that I have access to this or that, or, that I'm living this great moment. Come on, we are in the middle of a war.
Yes.
So I know each one has the right to think and to do whatever they want to, but for us that are starting to be more conscious about that, uh,
Correct.
remembering that we live in society, and every action, every
Mm-hmm.
word that I say
Mm-hmm.
may impact and may be the cause of trauma, a long life trauma
Yeah.
to someone else, because you laughed at me at school because I don't know, I had lice and I had
Mm-hmm.
to have my hair cut very short, and
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, for the rest of your life, you're going to be, that person that, has a nickname that
Yes.
the
Mm-hmm.
whole group gave you that nickname,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or because you had, I don't know, a thyroid problem and you have a raspy voice. Oh, the raspy is coming. It's
Yes.
an illness. We
Mm-hmm.
should be so much more careful. And sometimes, even when we are talking about, oh, but they are children, they do not know what they do. So if they don't, the educators, the parents should be talking,
Mm-hmm.
or we should have classes on being more sensible in relation to others, or meditate about the golden rule.
Correct.
Would I like if anyone would come to me before all the disgrace that I'm living now,
Mm-hmm.
and, and do this or that. There was a time that divorced parents were a complicated thing. So you would be pointed in that school, all their parents divorced, and and
That's
all
right.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's very easy for us to place ourselves in the
Mm-hmm.
position of victims,
Yeah.
and to shut down ourselves, to
Yes.
hide from the
Yes.
world because I don't want it to face, I don't want it to get my more hurt. So I will give up life. I'll give
Mm-hmm.
up living
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want this trauma anymore.
Yeah.
But you see, one point that we talked before, Marcia, and that I would like to emphasize now is do not think about yourselves only in the position of the victim, but in the position of someone that is victimizing some other person with your insensible comments.
And I think it's important. Sorry to interrupt here, but it's important to what you're saying here, because sometimes we're not even aware that we're being insensitive. So I think it's important for us to just take a moment to reflect my pain points, right? My hurt may be so deeply buried that I do not know that I have it. Yet, whenever you, generic you, speak about it, make fun of it, it may trigger a very difficult reaction for me that it makes sense to isolate. So victim or those who victimize the others, we should both be aware of this issue, right, Jusara?
And you see, Marcia, sometimes it's not even a direct uh,
Mm-hmm.
comment that you receive. With
Mm-hmm.
social media, if someone talks about, oh my God, if you're still wearing
Mm-hmm.
jeans, is because, whatever. So you will think, oh, I'm still wearing jeans, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
even addressed to you,
Yes.
but it will
Yes.
bring you shame
Correct.
because you
Mm.
are going to be accepting
Yeah.
what others are saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think here, what Joanna de Angelis is trying to show us in this chapter, it is a problem. It is happening much more than we are realizing. This anxiety that we are going to be feeling from one reason or another. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter at this point. Just pinpoint the time
Mm-hmm.
that was the reason where everything started.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main point is for us to address that and to know that this is not a healthy habit and situation. Like she also says,
Mm-hmm.
everyone will have anxiety one way or another. For instance, let me share with you a secret.
Uh,
Every time, I mean, it's a secret, your secret with mine, Marcia. Every time we have to, prepare ourselves to go on air and to bring to you this podcast, we are very anxious. We are nervous because what we are going to say. It may have the reaction, a negative reaction to someone, and it's a lot of responsibility. So yes, we pray before we started that we can be guided not to say things that either are not correct in terms of, especially when we are bringing those scholars of the soul, the spirit, like Joanna de Angelis, that was a scholar and during her lifetime as well. But other scholars like the psychiatrist that uh, the psychotherapists that commonly we mention, but all
mm-hmm.
that. So we feel anxious. So
Yes.
anxiety is part of our emotions, but they have to be controlled as well. And they
Yeah.
have to, we cannot let this become a pathology.
Correct. Correct. And I just wanted to go a little bit further with that, right? Is there a problem wanting to be left alone? You would say yes, no, if it's preventing you from being harmed, et cetera, et cetera. But going back or drawing back to some of the concepts that Joanna de Angelis brings to us in her psychological series, she brings that idea that we, all of us, are social beings, right, Josara? And it simply means that we have a biological component, as I mentioned before, when we become, say, anxious about something, there's all sorts of hormones that start to lead our body to feel this way. Our heart beats a different rhythm, so on and so forth, as that biological response. But as a biosocial being, we are social, just like all the other animals out there, mammals, etc. They're social animals, but we're only social animals that are also ethical. That sense of ethics, the sense of looking for what is the right way to behave, to react, to speak, to think, is something that differentiates us, especially when we use that sense of ethics to look for what is that is moving me, right? So I think when I say this, I just wanted to remind all of us, we know we've talked about this before, but remind us all of our long journey. We start to talk about this journey, right, Jasada? But this journey toward our evolution, that our reaching this notion of perfect happiness as pure individuated spirits, and we're going to get there, but we're not there yet. So in knowing that, it is important to understand that we may want to protect ourselves from being hurt, but in order for us to continue this evolving nature of our journey, this long-term, multi-life journey, we need to be exposed, right? We need to understand people, be exposed to events, exposed to challenges, exposed to other people. And I just wanted to say to all of us, we need to be reminded of this beautiful invitation to live a meaningful life, right? To be open to new challenges, to really push ourselves to learn, to understand, to look into our values, to go through all of this multitude of chaotic, complex, not so easily understandable experiences that it's out there, so that we can really push ourselves to be bigger, broader, expanded who we are. So, from that perspective, I just say, let us understand that this empty culture that we are part of it now, largely driven by social media, right? And it's just a state of it is that we need to be very aware, as you said, Jusada, very aware on our role, either as a victim or as a victimizer, and knowing that many of us, I would even say most of us, are prone to anxiety. So let us be the best of what we can be, and protect the other, protect the feelings, right? Jusara, any final thoughts before we close today?
Just one thing related to how we started talking about freedom. Uh,
Hmm.
Times we may deceive ourselves saying, it's my freedom of choice to just refrain from participating that much in the world, to have
Right.
this kind of socialization. But according to what Joanna de Angelis explains to us, this is when we are creating virtual prisons to us.
Mhm.
So we lose our freedom and we are not gaining anything from it. The richness of experiences is exactly to put yourself out there in the world and to contribute and to gather as much as you can from the different talents that exists in the world, that you can grow, that you can learn. In the same way that you have talents, you can have things, to teach others. And this is what makes our world so much more, beautiful, and
Hmm.
way that we can contribute to this growth. So it needs our participation as much as we need to be part of it,
Hmm.
of the whole engineering, that makes this world goes round.
I love it. I love it. Those are really good parting words from you, Jusada. And I'm just saying, just be who you are, all of what you are, and welcome all your feelings, right? Let's be kind to one another and be resilient to the ups and downs that life brings to us. But with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here with us today, and we'll meet again next week. So long.